Good thing Michael's here.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what
Oh, okay, excellent. Thank you. We good? Thank you. So, welcome to our Toasty June meeting. Thank you for coming out. As Michael and I were discussing, which you'll hear in the minutes, it takes a special level of civil commitment to come out when it's 96 degrees. So we thank you for your participation this evening. We're going to do a roll call and move on to the meeting. So, Sean along. So you guys will let me know if you've heard from anyone. Okay. So, no. Eric Atwood.
She's going to be a little late.
Okay. Mujeeb Chaudhry is here. Thank you. Ben Geffen had an excused absence. I am here. Marvin Lazenberry also, I believe, had an excused absence.
Have you heard from him?
Did he?
I believe that he sent an email that he was away.
Okay.
George Mosley is here. Bilal Fayom is here. Michael Ramming. Okay.
He said he's going to be here.
All right. Naima is in Seattle. Sonia Velasquez is here. Michael Wehrman is here. And Sarah Young is here. All right. Thank you. So we may have distributed, Marcel may have distributed the agendas. We're going to have a brief change-up, and we're going to give an opportunity to Special Investigator Joe Chafin from the PAC office to give a report on youth engagement. So please.
Yes, thank you. I've been assigned a project for youth engagement, and we put together a summer curriculum and a fall curriculum. The summer is going to be like our test week, so to speak. It's going to be 5 consecutive weeks, and beginning with June the 29th. And we partnered with Education Works because they have a body of students that basically fits what we're trying to accomplish. They're all drawn from the city. You have a handout to help you follow along, and it gives you an overview of the goals that we have in mind with this youth engagement. We want to help the students to build the concepts of, or understand concepts of building trust and building relationships for better policing. We want them to understand the best practices for this, and we want them to identify challenges that they may face and how to deal with them. And we want them to at least have in mind how they could share these concepts with others, and whether they do or not, at least they personally will benefit. The learning objectives, upon completing this, they'll be able to do the following: explain what it means to build trust and the benefits to doing that. They'll be able to describe what a student can do to facilitate that within their community. And they'll identify, as we mentioned earlier, potential challenges and how they would respond. And the benefit behind that is that you can choose to wait till something happens and you're unprepared, or you can be prepared. So not all students will be gung-ho to get out in the community and make change and social change. But at least if they have a better understanding of how they can handle situations that they're probably going to face at some point, then that'll be good. So we start out with a My View of Police survey. And you have a survey that you can look at. And this is not done in a public forum. It's done within this class setting, so it's confined. So the results will be based on those 25 students. We'll discuss the results, reasons, and solutions, and then we'll discuss some of the challenges. And you see the breakdown in terms of the first week. The second week, what is trust building and engagement? I'll speak to them briefly, what we're looking for, what it means. And then we're going to look at a video that helps them appreciate what their rights and responsibilities are when they're in a car, when they're stopped in the street, if their home is searched. And then the third week, we incorporate the police. And these are roundtable discussions. There's 25, so we'll break off into 5 groups. And in those 5 groups, there'll be 5 students, 2 officers, and a facilitator, which means either a representative from PAC or Education Works. Okay. What will happen is that each group assigns within their group, they're going to pick somebody to be that spokesperson so that then they can tell the rest what they took from that, their roundtable discussion. And so all the takeaways will be identified. And then what they may have learned to overcome the challenges and what the police learned that will help them, to better serve the community. So, because they're going to be takeaways for the police. I know when we did this with Drew Landau with public relations, that the officers also had takeaways, from it, not just the young people. So it was really helpful there. Then they'll use this information in week 3 for week 4 as a discussion of an action plan for solutions. So each group will discuss the takeaways from week 3, but then they're going to design an action plan for their action project. Because the last week, they're going to be in a reality-based situation with a police officer, if their scenario involves a police officer. So if it's a vehicle stop, they're going to show how they would handle it. The officer's going to show how he would handle it. Both parties win if they do that, So that's good. So that's what we have for the summer. The benefit of the fall, we're going to step back, look at what we did right, what went wrong, and then build the fallout, to make the curriculum even better. Because we can do more. It'll be monthly meetings and over 10 meetings, over 10 months. Okay.
Thank you. This seems like a great project. Please.
Sure.
A couple of questions. One is there was a national study done that shows that most, particularly African American youth, first contact with the police is through car stops. And some of that is racially profiled. Are you going to get in that kind of discussions in these sessions?
Oh, they'll see all of it. They'll see how to respond, what to do in a car stop. And whether the officers, has poor people skills or good people skills, they need to know. For instance, do you have to get out the car? Maybe he orders you out of it. How do you protect your Fourth Amendment right against illegal search and seizure? How do you preserve the incident in a way without being combative? They'll be introduced to an app called PA Justice that they can use, and you can bring it down off of either platform, Android or Apple. And it was designed by the ACLU, and it allows you to take the video of the situation, record it, also identify nearby witnesses, and then if your phone was snatched, then it still is preserved in the cloud. But even with that, you're not looking and see, you're on camera, that's not the idea behind that. You're just, it's like a silent witness, and you're not a narrator either. There's a lot of that goes into that. I give this to Rise, which I believe is a more challenging audience than what I'll be facing. But, because there's a lot of more cynicism, that's why I say that I have to overcome first.
Who are the police officers?
We haven't identified them yet. We know the inspectors, we're going to work top down and identify, and Hans is lead spirit that identify them.
I've got a whole crew.
I was going to say, yes, absolutely. Yeah, so the goal was to reach out to the inspectors, as Joe mentioned, the captains, and ask them to recommend folks with the understanding that we need people who can, hang out with youth and take some, not so kind words if they happen by accident, Hopefully that's not going to happen, but you know, we need to not overreact. That's the issue.
On that same note, what are the criteria for selecting the children that are participating in this?
Well, for this summer, we stuck with something already ready-made, you know, like you didn't have time to cook dinner, so you kind of prepared food. But Education Works basically is centered around city kids. We talked about the type of kids that we're looking for in terms of demographics, not in terms of the attitude, you know. And they have. So we have the benefit that they're on the 6th floor, so I could walk down, I can see who's there and all, and that's great. And so we have a meeting place, you know, for all the scenarios. They just had a big event downstairs on the 1st floor. They have use of that space. And then for the meetings, conferences, they have a large conference room. So their power cord is there. So, you know, focus on that.
And I think the goal is, as Joe mentioned, we're still fleshing it out, but you know, for the fall, to get an interesting cross-section of youth and hopefully get youth from each district or from certain districts in the city. With the idea that we identify like 15 youth, is that the number we decided on?
Yeah, I think we talked about between 15 to 18, but the thing is that we had the advantage of moving around the school districts to identify different schools to go to, and all. So that's huge. So that's good. Any other questions?
Well, I'll just point out that I asked Joe kind of quickly, I'd love to do something with youth, and the rest of this has been absolutely his. So I really appreciate all this work, all the outline, the conceptualization of it. It's all been Joe. He's been really working hard on it, put together stuff very quickly, and I think a really quality curriculum. So I just wanted to thank you. Good job.
Thank you. We'll look forward to your report in the fall.
And we have a question from the audience.
Please.
I have a question for you. What incentives do the kids get for being
Good
in
question.
and for completing it?
Yeah. Well, we have arranged for them to get gift cards, and they get fed, you know, because Philipcore is partnering with us to do the catering. So there's encouragement there. And at the end, we'll give them a notebook and what do you call it, palm card. I don't know if you've seen the palm card that we have, but yes. So, you know, they'll have something to walk away with as well. So, okay, if you have any other ideas that that's been worked out.
They're getting one per session, so they're getting it's either 20 or 25, but they're getting one per week as compensation for their time. And
That's great.
yeah, so either way, I think it's a pretty good hourly rate.
Yeah.
Well, you know, they have their expertise, so we want to compensate them
That's
for it.
exactly the hard-fought argument that we made.
Yes.
that this is expertise to be valued like any other expertise. I think we agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I realize you have to forgive my manners. I didn't introduce our staff, so please.
Oh, hello. I'm Hans Manos. Hi, everybody.
Anthony?
Anthony Rock.
Marcel?
Oh, sorry, Marcel Bassett behind everybody. Sorry. Pleasure.
Mr. Chafee was walking out.
Pleasure.
And
Thanks, Joe.
And our council, Phoebe Gibbons. Okay, now I feel good. So I just wanted to talk about the training days. So we've been talking about trainings, and we need to have training. The commissioners need to be trained on, I think it's 4 topics, right? Collective bargaining, arbitration, CREA, which is the Criminal Record Information Act, right to know, and the shooting use of force protocol.
That part I did not ask for, so I can circle back to them. But everything else, the law department has said that if we give them dates, they will make it work.
Great.
So I think if everyone is available, I'll ask Sheila to reach out to everybody, and we'll try and figure out some dates for September, is my guess, or August, just to put it far enough out that we can get something down.
Yeah. I mean, do you think it would be helpful with about half of us here to collect 2 or 3 dates at the end of July, beginning of August, that we can all do it and just have a starting place?
Wouldn't be hurtful, so yeah.
Okay, so if everyone will indulge, when the meeting is over, we'll do a quick date trade-in. Okay? Okay, perfect, thank you. So, it's all you.
Oh, is that right?
See how that works?
I say hi, good morning, afternoon, good evening, everybody. As Joe mentioned, we have a continued effort on youth engagement, so I won't belabor that topic, but we're very excited about what we're looking at for the summer and hoping for the fall, about how we're going to be engaging our young people. Again, this is one of the many different specific populations that we want to make sure that we're contacting, that we're getting insight from. Unfortunately, we can't do all of them at once because we don't really necessarily have the capacity to engage everybody at the same time. But the goal is to to really diversify who we hear from and what they have to say to us. Recently, I think at the last meeting, I just started going, and I'm not sure if I updated you all, but I was at the American Society of Evidence-Based Policing Conference. Anthony and I went. It was a great conference. They had a lot to say, and I learned a lot about a lot of topics that are really specific to Philadelphia and what's going on nationally as it relates to those issues. And I'm happy to say that I was able to bring a lot of that stuff back and just talk to the police department about it. Hi, Erica. The conversation on Starbucks, has continued in this city in various forms. There's been at least 2 different community conversations that I've been to, including the Courageous Conversation Initiative, I think it might have been called, the Courageous Conversations are the folks who led the conversation. And once again, it was a good conversation where I actually didn't say a word, thankfully, but I got to hear from a bunch of folks and their response about how it made them feel. And the general consensus has more or less remained that the city is having a very intelligent and nuanced reaction to this that isn't specific to this incident, but what this incident represents to them. Mothers shared their stories, fathers shared theirs, people directly impacted by crime or by police action have shared their stories, all with the lens of understanding that we need to get the information flowing and have conversations around these things. So it helped me understand even more how the city is coping and dealing and grappling with these issues, which is really helpful for me, just do my job. So I was happy to be there. I'll take any opportunity I can to be at other events. This one provided food, so it made it even easier for me to be there. Many of you may know that I disagreed with the Daily News and their comments about the PAC. I thought it was a troubling article that was written, and I expressed that to them. But we agreed to meet anyway. And we had a very good meeting with the managing editor of the opinion section. I was very encouraged by what we talked about. She seemed very supportive of the PAC and of what we do. And I think that we just agreed to disagree on one article, which I'm happy to do, and move forward to that we will agree on, try to agree if possible, and respectfully disagree if necessary on other things moving forward, which is, I think, the best we could hope for as it relates to these types of instances as they happen. So I was very encouraged by that conversation. We've had continued attendance at PBI. I mentioned last week that we've gone to PBI. Lieutenant McVetch is here. Is it McVetch?
Yes.
Okay, Lieutenant McVetch is here. And so he'll tell you more about what PBI is. If you don't know what PBI is, stay tuned. But we are continuing to go. It's, for me, a great education about understanding what the adjudication, of course, the administrative adjudication of different cases looks like. And I learned a lot each time I'm there, just seeing back and forth and understanding how complicated some of these cases can be in terms of policy and in and out of policy. So we'll continue to go, or we will continue to go as a group, and we will continue to make sure that we understand how complicated these issues really can be. So it's definitely an education each time. We've had continued efforts on the officer survey. I mentioned to the group before that there is an effort that we're working with Managing Director's Office and the Police Department on an officer survey. It's going very, very well. Michael has continued to be helpful on this topic and give feedback on that. The feedback he did offer was really well received, I thought, it really, I think, really made the survey stronger. So thank you again for that. And as things tend to go, it's a slow rollout, but the bulk of the lifting is done, and if the survey is, from my perspective, more or less finished, it's just a matter of when it's actually going to be delivered, how it's going to be delivered, how often it'll be delivered, etc. The Use of Force Review Board, I've commented to the group in the past that the PAC has a voting member on the Use of Force Review Board. I won't go into each individual case, but to let everyone know that the board met again earlier this month on the second Tuesday in June, or the first Tuesday in June on the 7th, whatever it was. And the PAC voted, and we were happy with the outcome of the board as a whole. We have a new boss, almost, kind of. But no, really a new representative at the Managing Director's office. Vanessa Garrett Hartley is the new Deputy Managing Director for Criminal Justice. So I will spend a lot of my updating to the MDO through her moving forward. That isn't to say that I won't contact anybody else over there, but that is our new official person that we provide our updates to. We also have new interns for the summer. We have 2 lovely interns. Anna and Kim are their names. They're very nice and they're doing great work, and they get better every week. And they've been here 3 weeks or so, 2 weeks. So imagine what next week's going to bring. In addition to that, we have a Mandela Washington Fellow Mandela Washington Fellow, yeah. And it's the Mandela Fellowship for Young African Leaders. So he's from Malawi. He's going to be coming to Philadelphia for, I want to say, 8 weeks. And he's going to be spending time with the PAC in effectively another intern role, but really a slightly different role. And I think, if I was spoke to Joe about it too much yet, that he will be assisting on Joe's project and other projects. Policy analyst hiring is going very well. We have some very promising candidates and hope to make, well, we made 2 decisions, and we're hoping to make 2 more. The PAC, i.e. Marcel, has taken part in 2 bike rides, which I think is fantastic. I don't go on bike rides, but Marcel represented the PAC, which I really appreciated. And so thank you. And those are the Town-Wash bike rides.
Yeah, Town-Wash Police Department bike rides.
Yeah, so Town-Wash, the police department, now the PAC went on bike rides together. All is well in Philadelphia. Oh. And finally, the PAC has offered a recommendation to the police department on their training, specifically to refocus training away from just implicit bias training and towards the anti-racist training. And we were waiting for a response, if any, about that. I'm happy to talk to anyone about that as it comes forward. Yeah, so that's it for now. And tomorrow I'll be leaving for New Orleans if you guys are looking for me for a forensic social work conference. So I'm accessible, but I will be in a different state. Does anybody need anything? Any questions?
Well, thank you. That was complete. As always, you sound like you've been pretty busy.
Yeah, let me try. I think he's been busy.
Very good. Very good. So this evening, we're going to have a report on the Police Board of Inquiry from Lieutenant
McVetch. Yeah. What that means is I represent the department in all disciplinary hearings for civilian and sworn personnel. So I'm basically a pseudo prosecutor for the department. PAC comes down every once in a while to visit. News comes down to every once in a while to visit. It's open to the public for any kind of complaints against police. Internal investigations are not open to the public or PAC or me. I really not presentation, any questions, how it works. I can go on in depth for a long time here.
Maybe you
Tell us a little bit about the history of it, like
history?
how it got started and kind of what your responsibilities are.
I've been there for 3.5 years. That's kind of long for the department advocate to kind of teeter out a year or so, because it's a lot of stuff, the same stuff over and over and over and over again. The history of the PBI goes back as far as I can see, 1800s. Late 1800s, there's articles in there, if you ever read like a newspaper.com, something like that, you put in PAC, or not PAC, but PBI for Philadelphia Police, stories come up. Same stories now as back then, a little bit different though. A cop assaults another cop, goes to the PBI. Some vice fiasco, goes to PBI. A lot of money taken back then, goes to PBI, stuff like that. But it's, they were in City Hall, I'm not sure what floor it was, but they had packed courtrooms with press and audience and everything else. They were open to the public for everything. So it's been around for a long time, over 100 years. Different variations it is. In my position where I'm at right now, it's been there since the building opened up. I'm in the same exact building as the original was there. I actually have a picture from 1969 of the apartment I had back then having the case. Same, almost furniture too. So it's the same, like it's a wood panel room. It's kind of, you saw the curved wood panel room.
It's beautiful. It could play itself on TV.
But the same furniture there is back from 1969. So what happens here is investigations start first. Where the kind of this one happened, investigations start either through a complaint against police or through avenues internally. That could be a use of force investigation. It could be an anonymous letter through the commissioner investigation. It could be a complaint through a commanding officer for any kind of violation of any kind of policies or procedures. So there's two different avenues, and what's important for PAC though is they can only witness one avenue, which is a complaint against police. So basically when there's a complaint by a civilian against any kind of police officer for any kind of thing that they did wrong or they felt they did wrong, that's when PAC can get involved, come down and witness the PBI. Everything else, it's off limits in that because that's what the commissioner did. I represent the department there. I have the department's best interest in hand for all kinds of things. And mostly it's basically, it's not anything criminal down there. Any criminal, obviously goes to criminal court and I won't see that. If something was alleged criminal and declined through the DA's office, I will get that done. Off-duty incidents, on-duty, domestic assaults, I get them down there. We are bound by our code of honor, service, integrity, on-duty and off-duty. So we both have, that's why we can, I guess you can say we can punish people for stuff to do off-duty. But it's not really punishment. We try to, it's corrective action mostly what we do. Some people don't see that way because they lose days, they get suspended, they get transferred, but you're trying to change people's way of life in the department. So you have those avenues of the way a complaint gets down to us. It gets investigated by either internal affairs, EEO, which is part of internal affairs, that's where all the equal opportunity violations we have there, or a commander's district level or a unit level will do investigations too. Or complaint against police goes to internal affairs too. Anything kind of internal thing, we have a separate meeting for that too that investigates. When they're done investigations, it goes to PBI charging, the police board of inquiry charging. They apply the appropriate charges. After appropriate charges are applied, it comes down to my unit, which is basically just meeting two other officers that command it. We schedule the hearings. We store all the files, 25 plus 1 years. We notify all the complainants. I don't have subpoena powers, so I cannot actually demand someone come down there. I request all the complainants come down there. Anyone in the police department, obviously, I can tell them to come down because they have to because we have subpoenas for them. But any kind of civilians, I can't actually demand them come down. They show up sometimes they don't. It's kind of a deterrent to me when they don't show up. It's easier for the defense because I'd rather have a live person come in there and tell their story instead of having someone leave their state. And then it's a courtroom, pseudo courtroom. There's an attorney for the FFP there, or there is representatives for civilian unions there too. But the way it works is it's not criminal justice there, so we can have hearsay evidence committed, which means basically for me it's a statement. So everyone's involved in the investigation. They take a statement by internal affairs or by a commanding officer. That statement can be read into the record as if the person was testifying. The one problem I have with my thing is that they can't really, you can't get the emotion and feeling and stuff like that out of someone that does that. But I can have it read in the record as a proof that they did report something, and that's what they reported. So my part, I'm the prosecutor, the defense attorney, and we don't have one judge, it's a panel. There's a 3-panel board. It's usually a captain, a lieutenant, and a peer officer. Either officer, detective, corporal, or sergeant. And then he goes up the ranks. So if a lieutenant is accused, and it's a lieutenant, a captain, inspector. A captain's accused, and it's a captain, inspector, chief. It goes up the ranks. You got to have at least the same peer as you, the same rank as you, and 2 up for the captain. Each member has a 1/3 vote. So they hear all the evidence, both sides, defense and prosecution. They hear the evidence. They get all the documents in there. They give it a fair shake, what's going on there. They, by themselves, they gather and discuss the case and decide either guilty or not guilty. And it's a 2/3 majority. So it doesn't have to be unanimous. 2/3 guilty, 2/3 not guilty. If it's 2/3 guilty unanimous, then they determine the appropriate penalty. And each one of these charges, there's a disciplinary code has 8 chapters in there, and there's sometimes 26 for each chapter. There's a code for everything, pretty much. So if something that happens in the department, we can find a code for it. If we can't, each one of those chapters has an unspecified code. So that falls in each thing, like a duty, insubordination, conduct of the common, stuff like that. So each one of those starts out with an unspecified, which will cover anything that's not covered in the other codes. So they determine the appropriate penalty there. Sometimes the penalty is a reprimand, which is a written reprimand that goes into a record, up to 5 days suspension. Sometimes it goes reprimand to 15, reprimand dismissal, demotions, restitution. They decide all these appropriate penalties depending on what's in front of them. So they decide that 2/3 majority guilty, and they get the penalty, and they decide on that. They all agree upon that too. So once that's done, they'll sign it, either guilty or not guilty, whatever it's going to be, and it goes through a chain of command. Myself first, I sign off on it, then it goes up to a deputy commissioner and an ultimate commissioner. In this police department, the way it works here with the collective bargaining agreement and with the rights of the city, the only person that can demote, transfer, suspend is the police commissioner. So he is the ultimate authority for that. Even though there is a hearing before the board, he does not have to abide by that. He can decide what he wants to do. For the most part, he does abide by that, and he follows recommendation of the persons who were on the board, and he signs off on that. When that happens, it goes to personnel. It actually comes back down to my office. Then it goes to personnel, and that person is notified either of not guilty, or they're suspended, or it's a reprimand, or they got paid for whatever restitution got paid for. Also, when it comes back down to my office again, because it comes back down again, I'll give out letters to any kind of civilian witnesses, complainants, that says what happened. The outcome of either guilty or not guilty, that's all we tell them. So we say, based on this complaint against police, which was an ID number, a hearing was held, and the person was found guilty, and that's it. If you have any question, you contact me. Obviously, I'll answer any question I can. Some stuff we can't answer, penalties we can't answer. So when he witnesses PAC or anyone else or news media, they get witness up to the point where it's the end of the case. Deliberations, no one hears that. And afterwards, you don't know what the penalty is or the verdict is until the police commissioner actually signs off on it, because it can change. Other than that, that's pretty much the process in a nutshell.
So you said that they are notified of the ultimate outcome. So they're notified of what the board finds or what the commissioner ultimately?
Commissioner.
Okay.
Again, the commissioner only one that can actually do anything.
Okay.
You're not guilty or guilty, and then penalties for that. So the commissioner's the only one that does that. So after he signs off on that, it comes back down to my office, and goes through personnel, and personnel ultimately sends out the not guilties to the officers, suspensions, restitutions, transfer, what it is. Then I get it again, and I give out my letters to my civilian complaints.
Not every complaint makes the PVI, is that correct?
Correct. Correct. That depends on the investigation. So Internal Affairs does probably mostly all complaints against police. Based on their investigation, they can determine that either it was indeterminate, that it was not sustained, which means they can't prove or disprove that what the allegation is actually happened. They could be exonerated. They could be sustained. Sustained for other than what was actually complained for. So when Internal Affairs look at it, they look at the whole thing, not just one target thing of this. Say, for example, say a car stop and someone got a ticket, they feel like they deserve that ticket. Obviously, it's not the correct venue for a complaint against police. It should be parking authority for that. So you argue your case is parking authority, but we'll take the complaint, we'll do an investigation, and during that investigation, it turns out that the police officer not filed the proper paperwork. So he's sustained for the paperwork, not for the actual complaint. So it's a whole gamut what can actually be sustained. So it happens quite frequently. There's also another thing that can be done too, which is training counseling. So if a state complaint from either a district, a unit, or Internal Affairs comes down, and the captain of PBI charges, which is not me, obviously, they're separate from me, they do the charge. They feels that it would be better to train a counseling officer instead of bringing them in front of disciplinary charges. For a minor infraction, paperwork, something like that, they can be trained in counseling, which means they're trained, either given a directive, what they did wrong, told what they did wrong, trained by supervisors, don't do it again, and counsel, you write it down and you get that. That's a venue that we have for non-disciplinary recourse for correcting a problem we have with an officer. That's usually for very minor things. Obviously, major things that can happen.
Question?
Yes.
Ask a couple questions. Who appoints the panel?
Who appoints the panel? Okay, the panel is based on, I was just a 3-member panel, and we got to go with the same sex and race of the person there. So someone's got to be the same sex or race there. That just make it fair for everyone. People are trained in PBI. They're trained to, I train them in actual discipline. Basically what you'll hear, but a little bit more in depth of what they're supposed to do, how the discipline works, what they're supposed to do with the PBI, what they're supposed to do in deliberating, and what they're supposed to find out afterwards, the penalties and stuff like that. So people are trained. So it's a big pool of supervisors, detectives, officers trained. The person who picks it is not us. We don't pick the people. That's the Deputy Commissioner's office picks the people. And based on the sex, race of the person, they form a panel. And you try not to use the same person over and over again, obviously. You try to spread it out a little more so no one gets beat up with coming down to PBI all the time, because they have their own things to do too. These are captains in districts, officers in districts, officers in special units. It's all through all gamut of the police department.
Well, how do they understand the training part? How they select? In other words, if I'm a police officer, can I volunteer to be?
Yes, yes you can. I just had a training session probably beginning of the year. I put out a general message to the whole police department that says whoever wants to be PBI trained, submit a memorandum to the Deputy Commissioner, and that comes to me, and I review it, and I make sure that, that not someone that has 10 PBIs before. It's got to be fair. So even though they can have 10 PBIs, doesn't mean they can be automatically disqualified being a PBI. They have to look at each one of those persons individually and make sure that they're acceptable for PBI.
So those folks can volunteer or maybe appointed, and they hear all the cases?
It's 1 case per day, 2 cases in most.
But I'm saying, when I'm saying they can hear a case where it's a civilian makes a complaint, and then the internal investigation says something might be there, so we're going to take it to this.
Yeah.
Or it could be internal decision.
Internal, for example, a use of force. Every time you use force, you got a complete use of force form. There's a procedure for that. It explains what you did, what the other person did that caused you to use force. It's reviewed by Internal Affairs, each one of these. So every time someone uses force, that form is reviewed by Internal Affairs. If they see something on there that's 100% against policy, just by looking at it, by reading what it is, that's an investigation automatically starts. So that is an internal investigation.
So it sounds like you're policing yourself.
Yes,
and that's
100%.
And it gets to the question, you made a comment, we can come on and say, PAC can come if it's a outside complaint. But if it's an internal complaint,
yes,
we cannot come to those hearings?
No.
But it's supposed to be public hearings?
That decision is not mine. That's just what I'm just telling you what the policy is.
Okay, and I heard you say the commissioner.
Commissioner has authority for the whole, yes.
All right. How many cases do you think you average a year?
Cases, probably about 200 cases a year.
And that's internal and external?
That's internal, external, and civilian stuff. And for the most part, I believe you'll know that police are very low coming down.
Say again?
Typically 6 police. There's not many on the calendar for 26 police.
Oh, okay. Yeah, actually, I'm trying to figure that, but yeah.
Internal, we have more internal PBI hearings than complaints hearings.
Lieutenant, what is the burden of proof at the hearings?
Preponderance of evidence, which means 51%. More likely than not, the person who is accused of committing the offense commit the offense. That's basically what it is.
And what about appeal rights for someone who is found guilty?
Appeal rights is through arbitration, and that's through collective bargaining agreement. There's a first step through arbitration, and after the first step is either you don't agree with that, or they're AAA arbitration.
Do you have how long is your currently? I have 2 questions. How long is currently your training And my other question is, can you explain, do you still have the reckoning periods for the first, second, and third offenses?
What training are you referring to?
I'm referring to the training for the officers that sit on the BBI board.
Okay. Training's 1 day. Actually, it's less than that for promotees because for the most part, every time someone's promoted, I go and train them on PBI. And after I train on PBI, they are certified to sit on the board as long as they're acceptable to the PBI. So it's either a 4-hour class or it's a 2-hour class. For the most part, when they're supervisors, they already had the class before, so it's kind of just going up the line, they're getting trained again. And what's the second question? So,
explain the first, second, third, and reckoning periods.
Reckoning period to this. Reckoning period is each one of our 8 chapters for disciplinary code has a reckoning period for each one of them. So, for instance, most common offense is a 51110, which is it's a violation, basically a violation of a directive. So it's a policy violation that someone failed to do something that the director said you're supposed to do or not do. The first time, it's up to 5 days. That's the penalty. We recommend 5 days. Reckoning period is this. Reckoning period is the time that you were supposed to not have the same offense on your record after you're found guilty of the first offense. So my example I always give is January 1st, 2018. You're found guilty, or you did an offense. You failed to do a report. Investigated. You come down to a PBI, you're found guilty on June 1st of 2018. So your reckoning period goes back to the date of the offense. On January 1st, 2018, you got to be clear with the same type of offense because you're found guilty already before the reckoning period starts. So the reckoning period starts January 1st. Say September 1st, 2018, you do the same thing again. So now the reckoning period kicks in. Because number one, you're in the offense, and you're found guilty, and now the reckoning period starts again for you. So now it's 5 to 10 days instead of recommending 5 days. And it goes up the line. For certain offenses, they go incrementally. Some offenses are recommended dismissal automatically for each one of them. Depends what the seriousness of it is.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, because that way, when you mentioned about the charges that the board deliberates, they're predetermined time periods that they're found guilty. So, you know, if an officer is found guilty on a first offense and the recommendation is 5 to 10 days, that's the discretion of the board. Then the second offense, third offense, it escalates.
Yes, their penalty they're actually going to deliberate on is in front of them. It's on their 18s. 75-18 is what the disciplinary paperwork is, and it has on there what the penalty they're facing. It's recommended 5 days what they're facing. They can't go say I want to give them 10 days. And it's same as someone who's charged with 5 days dismissal. They can't go and give 1 day. You're outside the penalty range. Outside the penalty range is not where you're supposed to go.
Just one more question here.
Yes.
The defense counsel for the officer.
Yes.
Are they allowed to participate fully in the hearing?
Oh, yes, yes.
Is it FOP counsel?
Yes, FOP counsel, yes.
Every time?
Mostly it's two of the counsels went down there all the time, they're attorneys.
Okay.
I'm not an attorney, by the way, so I play one.
You're like your quad.
Yeah, by the way, I'm a lieutenant. I've been a lieutenant for 5 years now. I've been a police officer for almost 25 years. I've been an officer, obviously, detective, a sergeant, a lieutenant. I worked in the 15th, I worked in Northeast, Southwest, 18th, 25th, and now the PBI. So I've been around. I pretty much know a lot of stuff. I did a lot of administrative stuff as a lieutenant. So I know a lot of stuff and how the policy works. And that is to, obviously, to my advantage and to the department's advantage, because sometimes people don't really know how a lot of stuff happens. So in my view, I think it's better not to have an attorney be a prosecutor, because the attorney gets involved in too much stuff. You want to get the nitty-gritty of what happened, what they violated, and why they violated, and why I think they're guilty of that violation.
Right, and just for the sake of the minutes, every case that becomes an arbitration starts at PBI, but not every case at PBI becomes an arbitration.
The only way to have an arbitration would be a PBI.
So it has to, so every arbitration starts
Well,
as...
let me tell you this. No, that's not incorrect.
Okay, sorry.
Because there is something called a commissioner of corrective action. Obviously, the commissioner is vested with the authority to do any kind of action on anyone at any time.
Right.
It's his ultimate authority with actually giving out discipline. So he can start that from the beginning. He reads a investigation that says this person did this, this, and this, and he feels like, hold on, I want this guy going for a PBI, I want discipline from the meeting right now. He can do that. And almost, I'm gonna say 100% of the time, when he does that, that goes on back with arbitration. So you can start that way too.
Michael, did you have a question?
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, I had a couple. Do you happen to know an approximate number or percentage of officers that are trained in PBI? Like how many people?
I do not. I do not know that. So I've been doing it for 3 years with training people in all the promotees. I couldn't tell you a number. There's a lot. There's a lot.
Okay, so it's not like a large non-representative portion are opting out. People want to participate in the process.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
A second question about clarification. You initially said that people can opt into the training, then you later said during promotion people are trained as well.
There's two separate things here. Mostly for the people who, we want more people there because officers are the ones that actually we usually have less of because they get promoted and we lose those officers. Now they're supervisors, but we still get officers. So for the most part, when I do my training, it's more for officers and for civilians too. For civilians, we don't have a lot to draw from because they go on to. So when we do that, it's for the lower ranks, but it could be for anyone. But mostly the lower ranks come up. The ones every promotion, that way we always have people training the board. Okay. We always have new crew training the board because they can, every time you have promotion, you get new people, so it's new blood all the time.
If selected for the panel, are you compelled to serve?
You're required to serve. Yeah. Not all the time, but when I call you down there, you're
right, then that's exactly what I mean.
Yes.
And finally, a question on reporting out. It sounded as if you're the complainant, and so I file a complaint against Officer Hans, I'm alerted of the outcome, but nothing beyond that, as the person.
You're not alerted of the penalty, if there is a guilty.
Okay, but I'm told guilty or not guilty.
Yes, yes.
And but that information, other than me as the complainant, is not available to the PAC, it's not available to the public?
No.
Okay. Independent of the logic behind that, I heard that and I thought that was the case, so if you'll allow me to editorialize for just a moment. One of the primary concerns that the public at large has about police-community relations is the idea that police get to act without impunity and without oversight, that they do whatever they want and they're not scrutinized, they're not punished. And you've spent the last half hour telling us how this policy, this panel exists that does this very thing. Now, is there not an opportunity at some point in the future for telling the public about whether it's the outcomes, whether it's the penalties, some kernel of truth that displays that the police are trying to be accountable for what the police do?
I see your point.
Yeah.
That's what I agree. I can't ask her or answer that question. I don't know the reason why behind that. It's not. I just do what is required of me.
Understood. Thank you.
Yes.
Is PBI sanctioned by the collective bargaining agreement?
Yes.
And is it the collective bargaining agreement that precludes PAC from coming when it's an internal complaint?
No.
Is it the commissioner?
That was the
For internal
commissioner's
complaint?
volition.
I tell you what, this happened not too long ago, a year, 2 years, right, a long time ago, where it was, there's no real official policy.
So I can say that and request more information on this, that there's been an explanation offered to me that I think we've all heard before, which is that if police officers are taking the action to inform or otherwise come forward with their fellow officers, they want to preserve that and not, and there is a feeling that if the PAC was present, that officers would be less likely or willing to come forward. And I don't know if that's been tested or where that comes from, but that's the explanation.
And expand on that too is that officers come down and testify against other officers. They do come down. So it's an open forum as far as openness is. But they do come down there and testify against officers. It's testify for officers too. So yes, but as far as what reason went to the policy, I can't answer the question.
I'm having trouble hearing, so I may have missed.
I'm sorry.
Yes. But is the prohibition just regarding the PAC and not the general public with regard to the internal complaints?
No. It's for internal complaints is only myself and the FOP, attorney and FOP there.
So nobody from the public can come?
And talk to the public, we talk about news media too.
I don't know if I'm out of order, may I ask a question?
Please.
Regarding, I'm Bill Kenny from Senator Tartagliano's office. Regarding the disclosure of the outcome of the hearing to the complainant, I guess this basically applies to a civilian.
Yes.
Are there any restrictions on them discussing the outcome? Obviously, you don't announce the outcome publicly. I'm a civilian, I'm the complainant, okay? You advise me of the outcome of the hearing, what the panel decided. Am I prohibited in any way, shape, or form from discussing that?
I mean, there's no confidential agreement with that, so I would say no, but that's not, I never came up at all, so I don't know.
Well, I ask because if I have an issue,
I can't control
if I have
where
an issue
it
with a
goes.
police officer, and then I come and we go through this PBI, and then the panel issues its decision either way. Obviously, you're not going to release that information publicly from the panel, but maybe I want to go to the Daily News and tell them how the panel ruled on this complaint, you know?
It has not occurred yet, but I can't go into your house and say you can't do this stuff, no.
All right.
I mean, we do give it to you. It is a form from the police department that gives to you. Good question. Good question.
Forgive me. So I have a question kind of following up on Michael, the need for transparency for the public to see that in fact officers are disciplined when appropriate. Is any of the information released even in an aggregate to say we had this many hearings, this many people were found guilty, this many people were punished in this way?
In a report, so just in data that's released to citizens.
Well, the CAPS Online have some of that information, no? Or
The CAPS Online, I haven't actually delved into that, so I'm not sure.
So,
CAPS Online?
So the complaints against police are published. They remove the identifying information as much as possible, and there's kind of a larger representation of what happens. I think it's going to be improved because it looks really bad right now, and by bad I mean just poorly organized. So I think it's going to be improved by the Open Data, the city's Open Data Department. I think they've acknowledged that it doesn't look great, and that it can be organized better. So I think we're going to see a change on that. But yeah.
But that's not presented in the aggregate. I mean, so you would have to go through and kind of count and set up your own.
So, for instance, I don't know if you could differentiate between someone who accepts punishment or goes to PBI, for instance, right? I don't know if you can differentiate that based on the CAPS.
It's just a complaint.
I think it's just the CAPS and perhaps the outcome.
I thought that outcome was there, but
Right.
I guess in order to get a sense of the magnitude, you'd have to do some version of a manual count.
But when I say the outcome, I think it might be the outcome of the investigations. The investigation found them sustained, not sustained,
Yeah.
not necessarily the PBI outcome. I don't know for sure, but I think that's what the CAPS are looking at.
Exactly. I'm not really definitely that's not our requirement. So.
Well, thank you. That's helpful. Other questions, please, Sarah?
Is there a prohibition against releasing the data in the aggregate to the public, or is it just case by case?
Probably case by case. I get requests all the time from outside sources all the time, but I go through the department and say yes or no, I can release this. So it's not like I don't have a set policy that says you can release this, this, and this, or you can't release this, this, and this. It's a case by case basis. News wants something all the time. They go through the channels, or they go through me, which is wrong, and they want whatever documents they want, and I don't release anything until I'm told to by the department. So yes and no. I'm probably clear as mud there, right?
So there's no policy, but you're cautious.
I don't know policy. I don't know policy, but it's not up to me to do the policy, if you understand that. It goes through the department and the commissioner's office as to what is released, what's not released. They may have a policy that I'm not aware of.
So that question I asked about how many cases, at the end of the year, you said possibly 200. Out of that 200, let's say 50 are civil complaints, the other 150 are internal. At the end of the year, there's no report saying what I just said and what the outcomes of these cases.
I do not have any reports now.
So,
I'm not sure if anyone else does. I do not.
I'm looking on Open Data Affiliate right now, and as of March of this year, 2018, there are 3 pieces of information here around complaints against police for the month of March. So I'm assuming you can go back for other months, or this, I'm opening up a document now, seeing whether or not it encapsulates the year up into and through March. That allows for kind of that data gathering. And it allows you to download an Excel spreadsheet that probably has, you can total the number, it tells you.
Looks like you've got to do that individual count.
Yeah.
But Erica, that's for complaints, public complaints.
Yeah, so
the
it
flip
doesn't.
thing I'm saying is that there could be private, I mean, not private.
Internal police complaints.
And those numbers might be much higher.
Probably are.
And to me, I mean, that's very interesting because some of those officers, as far as citizens are concerned, those are guys we don't want on the streets sometimes. So it's almost like
a caveat to that is these, a lot of stuff that that come down there is minor things. Okay. And minor things, paperwork violations, a slight policy violation for doing something not the way you're supposed to do it. There are other ones that are major that come down there, and obviously we want to take care of those people. And we want to put them, steer them straight in the way you're supposed to do it, and not do that again. Sometimes you can't, you have to get rid of it, but it happens quite often.
That's arbitration, correct? Excuse me.
Right, but that's arbitrary. That's out of my, they do what they want to do in arbitration. That's not my department either for them, sorry. I don't want to keep saying that, but I'm here for discipline only and additional discipline only.
We have a question from the audience.
Yes, ma'am.
You might have addressed this, and I missed it, and I'm sorry, but if this 3-person panel finds an officer guilty as charged, can that decision be overruled by another entity?
Yes. So say, for example, they'd find someone not guilty. So they find someone not guilty, and the whole panel agrees that he's not guilty. So it's a majority not guilty. It goes through myself, and basically it's to say, I sign off on what they did. So I'm going to say they're not guilty too, because I sign off what the board does. Then it goes to a deputy commissioner, and then the commissioner. And each one of those, the deputy commissioner can say, no, I think he's guilty, and I'm going to give him this penalty. Ultimately, there's only one person that says yes or no, and that's the commissioner. So he's the last person to sign it. He sees everything. He sees what the recommendation was from the board. He sees what the recommendation was from the deputy commissioners, and then he agrees with them, disagrees with them, or does his own thing. So he can do whatever he wants to do.
And that's whether the decision was guilty or not guilty?
Correct.
You can override either one.
Correct. Correct. And one thing for that, for a not guilty, when not guilty is done, you just don't say not guilty and that's it. The captain of the board or the president of the board, usually captain, will have to write a memorandum to the police commissioner explaining the reasons why the board found not guilty. So it's usually outlining what the case was, who was there, who was heard, and the reasons why this person was not guilty is here, A, B, C, and D. And that goes with the paperwork up the chain of command to the deputy commissioners and the commissioner who review that for not guilties. And anything else, they'll review for either the penalty's too low, too high, we'll adjust stuff like that. Transfers, you can say yes or no one. He is the commissioner, so it's only him that can actually suspend the vote, transfer, or restitution for someone.
And can the FOP get involved in this process?
No.
Not at all?
Their process is at the beginning, during the PBI hearing, and then if they don't like the outcome, arbitration rights.
Who's involved in the arbitration?
The Labor Department and the Police Department, the Legal Department in the city, and the FOP and the neutral arbitrator. So you have the FOP, the city, neutral arbitrator.
So if there's a guilty decision, would you guess that the FOP gets involved with like every verdict?
Not necessarily. Again, for the minor stuff, which we deal a lot with, mostly is minor stuff, they don't. Sometimes they do automatically. So say, for instance, any kind of guilty of reprimand, I'm going to say 99.9% of the time, they don't get involved in that. Anything with a suspension date, they may for one day, they tend not to. It's more for the people who were, they felt was unfairly transferred, unfairly demoted, unfairly fired, were given a penalty that was too high for the offense. For the most part, that's just from my observation. Like I'm saying, I'm not an FP attorney. I don't know why they do their arbitration, but that's just my observation of what happens.
What the general public's feeling about this is that the FOP doesn't want any officer ever found guilty of anything.
And that's probably every labor management group too. It's just not the FOP, it's also the 33 and 47 too, they come down to. So DC 33, DC 47, they're entities out there, they come down as long as they're employees of the police department, and they go through a PBI too. So there are civilian PBI boards, which are civilian boards and the civilian accused. So they have the same thing too, and they feel that none of their personnel should be ever found guilty of anything, and if it's egregious to them, then they take it to arbitration. So they have the same rights too.
Lieutenant, what percentage of the guilties, where PBI finds guilty and the commissioner confirms guilty, what percentage would you say are overturned in arbitration? Or upheld, either?
It's such a long process sometimes, maybe years later, that I couldn't actually give an accurate percentage. I couldn't even guess. I mean, the big ones stick out in my head, but that's a very low percentage, and I know what I actually do now. So it's, but time space is different for me because I do stuff on any year, previous and current stuff. And then when arbitration comes through and agreement comes down or arbitration is won by the FOP, then it comes down, it could be 2-3 years later, or it could be 6 months later. It's all relative to the time they do it. It's agreed upon.
Thank you. Other questions? Michael, did you have a revelation about this or not yet? Okay. We may have a revelation.
Not tonight.
Not tonight. Okay. So next meeting in our old business section, we'll have a revelation about it.
Okay. That's it. No more questions.
Thank you, Lieutenant. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming by. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
So I don't think we have any old business. We talked about the training, so we're going to go our schedules at the end of the meeting. So let's go on to public comments. Any comments? Any questions?
I have a question, just, you might have said this at another meeting, but the person you're trying to hire, the policy analyst, what are they going to be doing?
It's a great question. And yes, I said that, but I'm happy to talk about it anyway. So we're looking for 4 policy analysts. The goal for them is to work on a variety of issues and a variety of different responsibilities. That means that they will work on understanding what issues exist between policy, practice, and custom. Policy, of course, is what is written down, what the police department has published. The practice is how they're doing that actual policy or how they're putting that into action. And of course, the custom is what's handed out from officer to officer. And we want to kind of get an idea about each of these things. The policy being the most accessible in many cases. Because most of the directives are online and available, and so the other policies that are internal may be tough but very easy to, more distant, very easy to get our hands on. And the practice is really trying to understand at a district level or even in a PSA level how that's being implemented and how do people understand it. And that can be more challenging also. It involves probably more interviews and more of our own investigations. So that'll be the crux of their responsibilities. However, the PAC on a regular basis engages the community. We have people who call us and say, I have a problem, and we need folks, and every person that we've met with or interviewed, it's going to be clear to them that they're not going to be crunching data behind a desk and doing stuff behind a desk. They need to be able to engage community members. The understanding that we get information from you all fine folks, is that you tell us, hey, arbitration bothers us, or the body worn camera policy is kind of unclear to us, or the disciplinary policy is kind of wacky to us. We don't get what's going on. And so we try to be responsive to that. And so we want all of our staff to be able to do the same, to be responsive to what community members are telling us about what's going on. So anyone we bring on will need to be able to respond to an actual citizen complaint when it comes in the door, and help that person resolve that however they like to, while also being able to articulate the many different options that they might have that aren't just filing a complaint. I think Anthony has worked on a case recently where the folks more or less agreed to a different resolution or to attempt a different resolution than just writing down a complaint and seeing that the internal affairs can do it. So all of our staff need to be able to work on that as well. So it's kind of a mixed bag with if I have to give a percentage, the lion's share being focused on reports or recommendations around policy, practice, and custom, with a significant portion of the job being focused around understanding what community members want and need and responding directly to specific incidences. Does that answer your question? Okay, great.
Other questions this evening? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Can I raise one issue?
Of course.
Is there something that I'm uncomfortable that Hans or any of us can only attend the PBI if it's a citizen's complaint? Is it appropriate that maybe we should draft a letter, send it to the commissioner, and ask his rationale why we're not allowed, or public not allowed to any other? I mean,
So, well, let me say that I shared your frustration when I first began. It's an issue that I did attempt to address. I believe I updated everybody. It was a while ago, but it is a concern. I think that I'll leave it to the board to decide how to respond. But I would support that, or whatever you guys decide. But it is something that I have discussed with many different folks in the police department, and I could say I don't think I'm telling tales out of school when I say that their major concern, just so you understand it, and not that I agree with it, is that it will have a chilling effect on officers reporting. If they find out that the PAC is involved or gets a copy of their complaint and they're identifiable to the PAC, that they are less likely to come forward. And that's their belief, which I encourage the board to consider. But that's what I just wanted to offer. That's what I understand their concern to be. Is that incorrect? Anybody?
It was consistent with what you said when the issue first came up. Well, I would make this suggestion. Rather than having our kind of internal deliberations on record, why don't we adjourn the meeting and we can talk about that briefly and just think about some next steps. Is that okay? Okay. Anything else for this meeting? So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Okay. Meeting is adjourned. Oh, I did this out of sequence. Our next meeting is July 16th at the 2700 North 17th Street at the PAAN?
The Philadelphia Anti-Drug Anti-Violence Network.
Thank you. The Philadelphia Anti-Drug Anti-Violence Network.
That's good.
We will see you all there. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.